everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and welcome to the Dice Tower Crowd Surfing. This is a show where we talk about Kickstarter and all sorts of things in the kickstarting world. Different board games, mostly. That's pretty much what we're talking about here is board games. And so let's get started, as always, with the news. All right, first we have Overlight RPG. Lights and Virtue. Now, this is from Renegade Games, and you might be thinking, Tom, why are you talking about an RPG? You don't normally do so. You're right, I don't. There's a couple interesting things about this. First, it's Renegade's first Kickstarter project, but an RPG, this is creating a universe that they're going to be putting board games in later on. And so I'm kind of fascinated with this whole idea of these different lights. The spectrum of lights, and each light has a virtue attached with it. I like the idea, the history. I'm debating getting a copy of this myself just so I can read up on the lore so that when the board games do inevitably come out, I kind of know more about the background of them. Then we have Samsara. This is a game in which you want your soul to be the first to reach nirvana. Now, it's done with sort of an anthropomorphic kind of your like gorillas and other creatures walking around, and the artwork actually is really, really nice. It's a deck building and pawn moving style game, and so you've just been reincarnated and you got to go from there. You got to give them points for an interesting theme. It's the first game from this company. We also have Mega Metro City. This is a beat-em-up, well, it's a board game based on the beat-em-up video games. Double Dragon, they don't want to say that, but that's kind of what this looks like in other games. And it's a scrolling board where the board keeps coming by. There's lots of miniatures involved in this. I don't know why this one isn't, like, exciting me more. I guess I'm going to have to see more gameplay for me to kind of get into it. The gameplay needs to be extremely simple, I think, because the games themselves were not that complex, so I want something I can play really quickly. Big Monster is a tile-laying game. There's another first time. There's a lot on my schedule, on my list today of first-time projects from different companies. This one here is you're building tiles here. It reminds me you're building like a ship, and then you're also putting monsters out. It kind of looks a little like Galaxy Trucker in the mechanisms. I'm not quite sure how it all comes out, but I like the look of it. Then Boards and Dice has Blight Chronicles Agent Decker. This is a solo game. It's a deck building game, a story building game where you're like a spy going to accomplish different missions. Solo board gaming is becoming a bigger thing, obviously, these days, to the point where maybe next year we'll even add a solo board game category to the Dice Tower Awards. And this is one I think it's doing very well. The reviews are very, very positive. So there you go. City of Kings, despite some negative reviews, one from me, this is smashing hit. The expansion for it, Ancient Allies and Valderon Gardens. Now, what's interesting here is the Ancient Allies adds more heroes and side quests and more stuff for the game. Valderon Games, I'm actually kind of interested in. It's a card drafting tile laying game where it looks like you draft these cards and they're building these gardens out. I kind of like that idea. And while City of Kings wasn't for me, there was a lot of people who really did enjoy it. I Am the Fourth Wall is an asymmetrical Cthulhu horror card game. That's a mouthful, and it's kind of weird. The concept here is kind of in the sense of the fourth wall is broken. You're playing a game about Cthulhu, but Cthulhu's real, I think. That's the concept I'm getting at. So it's a one versus all, or it can be team versus team, or there's lots of different things. A card game. Mark Street has done a full preview of it. You can see more there. Confrontation. It's a skirmish mini game. Now this one's intriguing to me because they say that there's 1,500 different miniatures. Holy moly! 16 factions. It's doing really well. Now they call themselves a definitive skirmish game. It's like the best. And I guess I must really be out of the loop because I haven't really heard of it before, but there is a ton of miniatures. And I couldn't even find much on here on how to play. I guess almost they kind of assume you already are a fan of the miniature game and it's just a way to get more. Who knows? Pirate's Flag. This is a capture the flag pirate game with cards and moving around a board. What kind of is interesting about this one is it looks really similar to Jamaica. Now, I know it's not Jamaica because Jamaica is a race and you're running around, but from the artwork to the ships to it just feels like it's like a sequel to Jamaica. That's what it feels like in the way it looks. But it's a fun, fast pirate game. There's always room for more of those. Court of the Dead. This game, one of the things I found interesting about this Kickstarter is you can get the sleeve of your choice. I'm like, can I pick no sleeve? I'm not a big sleeve fan, but I do know a lot of people like those. It's a 2 to 5 game. It's a fairly involved area control game with some really beautiful miniatures. So that's coming out. Then, and this one almost was my pick of the week here, Black Rose Wars. Now, last week, you saw us do a paid playthrough of this one, and I played the game several times before putting out the paid playthrough, and man, I really like this game more and more. I would call it an adrenaline killer. Adrenaline is like a shoot-'em-up game. This is like a game where you're running around with mages and shooting at each other. Almost reminds me of a more fun version of Wiz War. I really enjoyed the game. There's some minor things I think the board's a little busy and a few little minor problems here and there, but for the most part, it was just a blast, and it feels like every game would be very different. The Omen Saga, this is from Colossal Games, another game we played live last week with Travis from Colossal Sam vs. Z. It's a card game based on John Clodis's 2-player card games from the past. I remember enjoying this one. Lots of options back and forth. Our game was a little longer than normal just because we were talking through it, but it looks like a fast, interesting 30-minute game. My pick of the week is actually EXO, E-X-O, Mankind Reborn. It's a cooperative survival game. Now, this game has miniatures in it. They say really clearly in it, this is not a miniature game, but we love miniatures, so we put them in. That's where I'm at. Don't necessarily need to play a miniature game, but if you love miniatures, the miniatures in this game are phenomenal looking, but it's more of a cooperative survival game. Like you're coming up above the earth, trying to figure out what happened. You have these heroes that are going to go around. There's kind of mechanized animals. The theme of this looks really interesting. The art, everything about this project looks gorgeous, and I hope it's really good. Fire Tower. This is a competitive game. You know, you're trying to put out fires, right? And it's kind of an abstract looking game with these little red orange jewels and spreading a fire, and I thought, oh, it's another cooperative firefighting game. No! You're trying to make the fire spread towards someone else's tower. Alright then, I'll have to see that one working, but the theme isn't doing it for me. We'll see. Alhambra Designers Edition. Oh man, do I like Alhambra, and I have a big box Alhambra edition, which has 20 expansions in it, and if you go look, me and Melanie, we ranked all those expansions from 1 to 20. Well, this adds the 6th expansion, which I never got, and 9 more expansions for the game, each designed by different designers. So very many different popular designers have kind of put their own spin on it. For example, Michael Schacht came in and added a zoo to Alhambra for Zoo Loretto. And so I'm kind of fascinated. There are 33 total expansions if you get everything here. That's really, and there's a tower to pull the tiles from, reminiscent of the Carcassonne tile. So that's pretty neat. That's Alhambra, the Designer's Edition from Queen Games. Then we have a couple more. Hellboy, the board game. This is from Mantic. This one is blowing up, doing extremely well. Of course, it's a very popular IP. 60 to 90 minute game. There's some really cool 3D scenery, which I want even if I don't like the game. So there you go. And then finally, Forbidden City Deluxe Edition, or just Forbidden City, from Andreas Stedding. This is from Tasty Minstrel Game. Where you are basically, it's your typical things you're building, and there's different options, and it looks like you play a card and put someone down, and you get to do the option of where you go and the card that you played. So like a combo type worker placement game. I'm not quite sure, but Tasty Minstrel Game does a lot of really great stuff. A lot of great projects here. Let's keep moving.
Hey folks, and welcome to another FOMO, the segment where I take a look at a game that's currently seeking crowdfunding right now, and I haven't decided if it's a game that I think that I'm going to miss out on or not, and maybe you're in the same boat. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Blight Chronicles Agent Decker. Blight Chronicles Agent Decker is a solitary, story-driven card game where the player takes on the role of a Blight operative sent on a dangerous mission. A full game is comprised of a single mission, which in turn is made up of 7 stages, each of which is played as a mini-game. Completion of a stage may allow the player to make decisions in a choose-your-own-adventure style as to what stage you wish to play next. A single round of play consists of 5 phases. First, the player will engage, playing cards from their hand for abilities as well as power in the form of physical and evasion. This will allow them to target a single card on the board to either eliminate or knock it out. Eliminating an obstacle allows the card to be added to the player's discard pile to be used for its abilities or power later, and triggers any eliminated effect on the card if present. Knocking out a card flips it over and allows the card to be later avoided without raising suspicion or other effects listed. After this, the player moves to the reorganize step, where they will draw back up to their hand limit. If the draw pile is empty, the player must shuffle their discard deck to make a new draw pile, but this will increase their visibility by 1. The next step is avoid. In this step, one of the obstacles in slot 1 or 2 is moved to the avoided obstacle stack. If one of the obstacles is face down, then the player decides which card. However, if both are present and face up, then the card in slot 1 is moved. If there is only one card between the two slots, then that card is moved. If a knocked out card is moved, then no effect happens. If a face-up card is moved, then the player increases their suspicion by the amount printed on the card and potentially resolves any oversight effects if present. Phase 4 is the move step. All obstacle cards slide over, filling in empty slots on the board, and then proceed to Phase 5, look around, where new obstacle cards are revealed, filling in empty spaces and resolving any reveal effects on those cards if present. If there are not enough cards to fill in the slots, then the mission has failed. Besides this, another way to fail a mission will be printed on the stage card, such as here, where if the player's suspicion hits 15, then the mission has failed. To succeed, the player must meet the printed requirements of the stage card. If the success criteria is ever met, then the player flips the stage card and follows the printed text, potentially making decisions before moving to the next stage. Complete all stages of a mission, and you have won the mission and the game. So that's a brief overview of Blight Chronicles Agent Decker. Now, I didn't go into every little detail of this game because there's not enough time, and honestly, there's already a Dice Tower preview that Mark Street and his co-host did for this game that I think really you should take a look at to get the finer points of the game. As to the game itself, well, this is a deck builder, and traditionally, I don't care for deck builders that much. But it's a solo game, and I love solo games. And I really like this game. Now, the thing that I kept comparing it to along the way was Hostage Negotiator, another solo game that I absolutely adore. And what I really wanted to know is, would this game fit in my collection, given that I still play Hostage Negotiator on a regular basis? And the answer to that is yes. This game is far different. I get that same feeling, but it feels different. And the thing that I love the most about this as a deck builder was the fact that traditionally a deck builder, I kind of wanted to have a thin deck. And here I want a big deck because I don't want to be cycling through it, but I also do want to cycle through it because I want to get those higher cards for my objectives. As to everything else in the game, I really, really loved the whole mission-based thing with the stages in it. And I love the little choose your adventure thing. Overall, this is an absolute must back for me. I definitely don't want to miss out on this. I hope you've enjoyed this small look at Agent Decker, Blight Chronicles, and I look forward to seeing you folks next episode.
Every time that I go through and look at the projects each week, I'm trying to get some sort of grasp. I can't spend a ton of time, watching every video, everything that's going on. There's how to play videos and all. I can't watch all those, so I want to go to the project page itself and see how is the game played. And I'm amazed at how many projects show you the pieces first and then eventually get around to showing you how the game's played, whether it's a how to play video or some Flash how to play stuff, which I actually like the Flash little sequences where they show you can move pieces here and do this, and it's kind of like, and it gives me a nice overview of the game. I really like those. But I'm amazed at how many companies, and some companies barely even tell you how they play the game. They're just like, look at this miniatures, and be awed. Well, that's great, and I'm glad that you have all these things. In fact, some companies, once they start reaching stretch goals, that's the very first thing on the project, and that's probably because people are checking the project every day. Like when I was backing Batman for Monolith, I would check, about once a day or whatever and say, ooh, what new miniature? And I wouldn't have to scroll down far. It was right at the top of the page. But that's not very useful for someone coming on. And I think that we're putting sometimes a little bit of style over substance. Now, we always say don't judge a book by its cover. But the fact is, everyone judges a book by its cover. And if a game doesn't look very good, many of the games that I talked about today, they look pretty good. They look amazing, and that definitely is attractive. But I don't know that I personally want to see more than just a pretty face. I want to see more than just a fun game, great components. I want to kind of hook me in with the theme, hook me in with the mechanisms of the game, give me something. And I'm surprised at how many games kind of obscure that part. It's like, well, you have to look to see how the game is played. And are we becoming that shallow as the audience, as consumers, where all that stuff's kind of secondary? Oh, the game's about Hellboy? I'm buying it. Oh, the game has beautiful miniatures? I'm buying it. Oh, the game is by my favorite company? I'm buying it. But shouldn't we want to know how the game plays? Now, I got accused a lot on my reviews, and like, Tom, just as long as you put pretty miniatures in the box, Tom likes it. No, that's not even true, even remotely. I am a big fan of theme. I am a big fan of how a beautiful game looks like. In all my games here, if I can upgrade the pieces and make them look cooler, I will do so because that means a lot to me to have a game that's really fun to play, but also looks great. But just looking great doesn't do enough. There's a reason Mega Man's not in my collection. It looked fantastic, but the gameplay itself wasn't good. And so many games cycle through after I review them for that very same reason. They look real pretty, but there's not a strong game there. And so as consumers, what can we do about this? I don't know, right? I can't say, well, I'm not going to look at this stuff anymore. I'm going to back based on game only, give me a good game. Well, who knows when we're going to only get good game. So anyway, these are just thoughts I have. I don't think there's anything I can do to change it. I don't think it will change, but I encourage you when you are backing projects, look beyond the pretty, the outside covering, all the neat stuff and say, is there a good game inside?
Hi, it's Jamie with Stonemeyer Games, and today I'm going to talk about stretch goals. Stretch goals are a big topic. I'm going to try to condense it down to about 2 or 3 minutes. I would highly recommend going to my blog and checking out the current state of stretch goals. It's a blog entry that goes over all the different options that you have for stretch goals with examples from specific projects. So the core concept of a stretch goal, at least the original concept, is that based on economies of scale, if you can make more games, then you can put more stuff in those games for the original cost. So if you have a game that costs $10 to make at 1,000 units, but you end up making 5,000 units, then the cost goes down so much that you can add some more stuff while still making it for about $10 per game. And this manifests in a lot of excitement and a feeling of togetherness and community for backers in a project because they feel like they're working together towards these common goals. Every pledge results in moving towards the next stretch goal, which feels really good. It feels like you're part of something bigger than yourself. It's also really exciting to show up on a project page as a backer and see a lot of either achieved stretch goals is really exciting and unachieved stretch goals because you see the potential there and you see that you're making a difference. For stretch goals, I would highly recommend planning and budgeting in advance for stretch goals for the vast majority of them, but also leaving yourself flexible enough to respond to backers' wants and needs and desires. You can't say yes to everything. In fact, you should say no to pretty much everything, but you can still listen to their ideas and find what works and what works within your budget. But be very, very conscious of that budget throughout the process because adding a stretch goal that costs too much could really, really hurt you in the long run if you can't end up affording it. It's important with stretch goals to start out with a solid core product. Don't make it look like you're holding all these things back that should be in the game. Just for the sake of having stretch goals, which isn't in fact what a stretch goal is. You, as a creator, you are essentially holding stuff back from the game, but you're doing it for good reason. You're doing it for that economies of scale reason, and you're doing it for that community building reason, which is a legitimate reason to do it. I would recommend having a mix of small and large goals. Like you might have, it looks nice on a project page to say, we're going to add 3 new cards, especially if all the art on those cards is unique. That looks nice. But it's also really exciting to have that big stretch goal. Where you're adding a new miniature, or you're adding a new mechanism, or something bigger than just a few cards. So I recommend having a mix of large and small. My preferred, and there are a lot of different methods. My current recommended method of doing stretch goals, so that you're not limited by the retail release of the game, is to have a Kickstarter version of the game and a retail version of the game. And all the stretch goals go in the Kickstarter version and are separated into an expansion that you can sell separately later. Whether they're added to an expansion or whether they are themselves an expansion that you add later. Separate that content and sell it separately later. Don't make it exclusive. That way you can delineate between, or clearly delineate for backers, the version that they'll buy if they wait on the project and get it in the store, and the version that the Kickstarter backers are getting, but you're not making it exclusive to them. You're still making it accessible to people who discover the game after Kickstarter. Last, one of the big things about stretch goals is day one. It's really hard to calculate what your project will do on day one, or on day 3, or on day 5, or on day 20. So I highly recommend revealing stretch goals in batches of maybe about 3 at a time. Start off with day 1 on your project. Have 3 stretch goals there so people can see them, but wait a little bit to reveal the next 3 until you see how the project does on day 1 or on day 5 or day whatever, so that you can space out those stretch goals strategically. In the end, it is somewhat... It's up to you to determine what those levels are, because the economies of scale get really, really muddled. In the end, you're going to be spending more money than you thought you would, but you need to do it in a responsible, budgetary way for your benefit and for the backer's benefit. So space those stretch goals out so that you have control over it, rather than putting them all up there on day 1, and then you relinquish control, and you might reach the final stretch goal on day 1 of your project, which would be exciting for backers, but terrible for you, because then they have the expectation that you have a whole bunch of other stretch goals lined up for the remaining 20 days of the project. So make sure to space them out and just reveal them in small chunks. Lots more here. Go to my blog and look at it at kickstarterlessons.com, or reply in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about stretch goals. Thanks.
Hey, hello there, Crowdfundation. Today we're going to take a look at Growl. It's a new and freshly take on a werewolf game, or Mafia. So the idea of the game is that everybody's going to start either as human or as werewolf, and they're going to pass cards around, so you may be able to infect other humans if you're the werewolf. So the way the game play is, like, everybody, as I said, will start as a human, and you're going to pass cards around to your left and to your right. Now, the thing here is that humans can't pass bites. So bites are basically the cards that will infect other humans. Once you get 3 bites, you will become a werewolf. Now, you not only may become a werewolf, but you may also die as you take wounds during the game. Now, one of the things that happens in the game is that somebody's going to draw a card from the top of the deck and show everybody, and then is going to give that card to one other player. And players can argue, try to negate not to have that card. Now, so as I said, you have the bite card. When you get 3 bites, you become a werewolf, or you get the wound cards. Once you get 3 wounds, you die. But you can mitigate that having either a salve that will stop or negate wounds, or you can have a charm which will stop you from getting eaten by the werewolf. At the end of the game, we'll say a werewolf cry or growl, and then all the werewolf people will growl, and we'll see who won the game. Now, another thing they add to the games, you can get treasure or coins, and those are worth victory point as an alternative way to win the game. I really like the idea. I'm a big fan of werewolf of all kinds, from one night werewolf to long night plays. And I think this takes a really nice and fresh look at it. I like the idea of passing the cards around and be able to infect other people. So the werewolf will increase, also how you shuffle and pass around. So it's almost like a trick-and-taking game mixed with that deduction, social deduction game I really enjoy. So I think they only have a few more days on the Kickstarter, and the initial backing is $16 only. It's worthwhile. I've played it, I loved it, and you should do it too. So I see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
And that's it for another Crowd Surfing. Thanks so much once again, folks, for joining me. I appreciate it. If there's projects that I missed, of course, you can mention them in the comments. I don't see everything or get everything, but hopefully this gives you some good ideas. Thank you again to all the folks who jumped in on and did segments for this show. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this has been Crowd Surfing on the Dice Tower.